The massive control ship hung silent in space behind Jupiter's largest moon, Ganymede. Inside, Commander Gray stood watching the blue-green planet through the observation deck. Earth looked so peaceful, so unsuspecting, just like all the other worlds the Dominion had conquered over the past 1,000 years. His long fingers traced the control panel as status reports from the scout ships flowed in. "All planetary scans complete, Commander," reported Officer White from her station. "The species shows promising signs of early space development, basic nuclear capabilities, and widespread electronic communications. They appear to be at the perfect stage for integration." Gray nodded slowly. Humans, as they called themselves, were exactly the kind of species the Dominion preferred to assimilate. Advanced enough to be useful, but not so advanced that they could detect the subtle influence of the mind control satellites. His people had perfected this art over centuries. The quiet conquest, the peaceful absorption of entire civilizations into the Dominion's control. "Launch the first wave of control satellites," Gray ordered. "Standard pattern, full planetary coverage." He watched as the smaller ships moved out from their hiding spots behind various moons and asteroids. Each carried dozens of the specialized satellites that would begin broadcasting the carefully tuned psychic frequencies that had subdued so many species before. The operation proceeded exactly as planned. Within 6 hours, the satellites had achieved their planned positions in high orbit around Earth, carefully hidden from the primitive human detection systems. Gray allowed himself a small smile. Soon, 7 billion more minds would join the great collective of the Dominion, their individuality gently suppressed for the greater good. "Initiating Phase 1 broadcast," announced Technical Chief Green. Her fingers danced across the control surfaces as she activated the satellite network. "Starting with minimal power, standard procedure for initial conditioning." The bridge crew watched their monitors intently. Usually, this was the moment when they would see the first signs of success. Subtle changes in behavior patterns, increased suggestibility in the population, the first whispers of unity creeping into the collective consciousness of their target species. But something was wrong. "Sir," Green's voice carried an unfamiliar note of confusion. "I'm not seeing any uptake in the signal. No neural responses at all." Gray frowned. "Increase power to standard operational levels." The technician complied, but the results remained the same. The psychic broadcasts that should have been slowly seeping into human minds seemed to be having no effect whatsoever. "Maximum power," Gray ordered, his composure cracking slightly. In all his years of service, he had never seen a species completely resist the initial conditioning phase. The satellites hummed with energy, pushing out psychic waves strong enough to instantly overwhelm most species. On Earth, humans continued their daily lives, completely unaffected. Children played in parks, workers attended meetings, farmers tended their fields, all with their minds remaining stubbornly, impossibly their own. "This is unprecedented," muttered Dr. Blue, the ship's chief scientist, who had been quietly observing from the back of the bridge. "Even species with natural resistance show some response to maximum power broadcasts. These humans, it's as if they don't even notice the signals." Gray's fingers tightened on the control panel. "Begin deep scans of human neural patterns. I want to know everything about how their minds work. And contact the High Council. They need to know we've encountered something new." As the crew rushed to comply with his orders, Gray continued to stare at the planet below. In all the Dominion's history of conquest, they had never encountered a species that was completely immune to their influence. The humans had just become far more interesting, and potentially far more dangerous, than anyone had expected. Dr. Blue was already poring over the initial scan data, his eyes widening. "Commander, you need to see this. Their brains, they're chaotic, almost randomly structured compared to other species we've encountered. The amount of internal neural noise they generate, it's like they have natural jamming built into their minds." "Can we adapt the signal?" Gray asked, but he already suspected the answer. "No, sir. Their resistance isn't like a shield we can break through. It's built into the very way their minds work. We can't control them because their thoughts never follow the patterns our technology requires. They're immune not by design, but by their very nature. Gray sent a priority message to the High Council. For the first time in Dominion history, they would need a new approach. As he watched the unknowing humans go about their lives below, he couldn't help but wonder if they had just discovered something that would change the galaxy forever. A species that could never be controlled. Dr. Blue's laboratory aboard the Dominion ship buzzed with activity as teams of alien scientists worked around the clock. Holographic displays showed spinning models of human brains alongside the neural patterns of other species they had encountered. The difference was striking. Where other species' brains showed organized, predictable patterns, human brains looked like chaos given form. The chief scientist hadn't slept in 3 cycles, too fascinated by what he was discovering. He had already gone through hundreds of secret scans taken from humans across their planet. Each scan only deepened the mystery of their immunity to mind control. "Look at this," he said to his assistant, pointing at a particular brain scan. "When humans sleep, their minds don't rest like other species. They dream. Their brains create entire worlds and stories while unconscious. It's beautiful chaos." Officer Red, his research partner, leaned in to study the readings. "It's not just chaos, though. There's a pattern to their unpredictability, like they evolved to be random on purpose." Blue nodded excitedly. "Exactly. And look at their planet's magnetic field." He pulled up another display showing Earth's magnetosphere. "It's unusually strong and complex. We think it might have shaped their evolution. Their ancestors developed these chaotic thought patterns as a way to cope with the electromagnetic interference." As they studied the data, Commander Gray entered the laboratory. The usually confident commander looked troubled. The High Council was demanding answers, and their fleet couldn't hide behind Jupiter forever. "Tell me you found something useful," Gray said, his voice tight with concern. Blue gestured to his findings. "The humans aren't just immune to our control. They're naturally resistant to any form of psychic influence. Their minds are like a radio playing all stations at once. Our control signals can't find a frequency to latch onto." Gray frowned at the displays. "Can we adapt our technology?" "No," Blue replied. "We'd have better luck trying to control a storm. Their emotional states alone generate more neural noise than our strongest control signals. And there's more." He pulled up new data showing brain chemistry comparisons. "Their minds produce a cocktail of chemicals we've never seen before. They feel everything so intensely: joy, fear, love, anger. And these emotions actually strengthen their mental barriers." Red added, "We tried exposing human tissue samples to concentrated control signals. The neural pathways actually become more chaotic in response, like they're actively fighting back." The implications were staggering. The Dominion had built their entire empire on the assumption that orderly, controlled minds were superior. Yet here was a species that thrived on mental chaos, whose very thoughts were a natural defense against control. "The High Council won't like this," Gray muttered, studying the data. "Our entire civilization is built on the premise that we can bring order to chaos. These humans, they're living proof that chaos can be a strength." Blue couldn't hide his excitement despite the commander's concern. "It's more than that. Look at their creativity, their art, their music. They turn their mental chaos into beautiful things. They solve problems in ways we'd never consider because our thoughts are too orderly." As if to prove his point, he showed recordings of human children at play, their minds lighting up with wild, unpredictable patterns. Then he displayed scans of human scientists working on problems, their thoughts jumping between possibilities in ways that would seem insane to Dominion minds. "And here's the most fascinating part," Blue continued, pulling up his latest discovery. "Their chaotic thoughts seem to be contagious. When our controlled subjects spend too much time around humans, their own thought patterns start to show similar chaos. It's like the human's mental freedom creates ripples in the psychic field." Gray's expression darkened. Are you saying they could disrupt our control over other species? Not intentionally, not yet, but given time. Yes, I believe prolonged exposure to humans could weaken our hold on controlled populations. Their very existence challenges everything we thought we knew about mental evolution. The commander stood in silence for a long moment, watching the swirling patterns of human thoughts on the displays. The Dominion had encountered resistance before, but never a species that was naturally immune to their power. Never a species that could potentially undo everything they had built. Keep studying them, Gray finally ordered. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. And Blue, keep these findings about their disruptive potential classified. If the High Council learns about this, they might decide that humanity is too dangerous to be allowed to exist. The Dominion's first infiltration attempt failed in a small coffee shop in London. Their controlled agent, a member of a species that looked almost human, walked in and tried to order a drink. The barista took one look at him and felt something was wrong. The agent's movements were too smooth, his smile too perfect, his eyes too empty. Within minutes, other customers were staring, whispering, pulling out their phones to record his strange behavior. Commander Gray watched the recorded footage with growing frustration. How did they know? He asked Dr. Blue, who stood beside him in the observation room. The agent's appearance was perfect. It's something humans call the uncanny valley, Blue explained, showing brain scan data from the witnesses. They have an instinctive ability to detect when something looks almost human, but isn't quite right. Their chaotic minds make them extremely sensitive to patterns that don't match their expectations. The second attempt failed even faster, this time in a busy street in Tokyo. The controlled agent, despite perfect human disguise, walked with machine-like precision. Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered, pointing and recording. Local police arrived shortly after, and the agent had to be pulled out before any real contact could be made. Their social media is lighting up with videos, Officer Red reported, monitoring human internet traffic. They're calling our agents robots, or possessed people. They can tell something is controlling these bodies, even if they don't know what. Gray paced the command center, watching multiple screens showing failed infiltration attempts across the globe. In New York, a controlled agent couldn't maintain natural conversation flows. In Mumbai, another gave itself away by not showing proper emotional reactions. In Rio de Janeiro, a group of children noticed the agent didn't blink normally and ran away screaming. How do they keep detecting us? Gray demanded. We've successfully infiltrated hundreds of species before. Blue pulled up more neural data. It's their emotional intelligence. Humans don't just communicate with words. They use tiny facial expressions, body language, tone variations. Our controlled agents can't replicate the natural chaos of human behavior. To humans, they look like empty shells. The situation got worse when the Dominion tried using controlled animals. They sent in dogs, cats, and birds under their influence, hoping to use Earth's own creatures as spies. But even this backfired. Pet owners immediately noticed their animals acting strangely. Videos of weird animal behavior spread across human social media platforms, creating even more suspicion. These humans, Red said, shaking his head as he monitored their internet discussions, they're starting to form theories. Some are surprisingly close to the truth. They're connecting the strange behaviors to the possibility of external control. A particularly embarrassing failure occurred in a small town in Canada. A controlled agent tried to infiltrate a local government office, but couldn't handle an unexpected fire drill. While real humans calmly followed evacuation procedures, the agent stood perfectly still, waiting for updated instructions that took too long to arrive. By the time the agent finally moved, dozens of people had noticed its strange behavior. We need to pull back all infiltration teams, Gray finally ordered. Every failed attempt just makes them more suspicious. They're becoming more alert, more watchful. Blue nodded in agreement. Their pattern recognition abilities are remarkable. Each failure teaches them more about what to look for. They're adapting to our presence faster than any species we've encountered. The final straw came when a controlled agent broke down during a simple conversation about human emotions. Asked about its favorite childhood memory, the agent couldn't create a convincing lie. The humans present noticed its hesitation, the lack of emotional depth in its response. Within hours, the incident was being discussed on human news networks. The humans are connecting the dots, Red reported, tracking their global communications. They're sharing information, comparing experiences. They're starting to realize these aren't isolated incidents. Gray stood at the observation window, watching Earth rotate slowly below them. What had started as a simple infiltration mission had turned into a complete failure. Not only were humans immune to direct mind control, but their chaotic, emotionally driven minds made them excellent at detecting controlled beings. The Dominion's most reliable invasion strategy had been completely undermined by human nature itself. "We need a new approach," Gray said finally. "And we need it fast, because right now the humans are becoming aware of us in exactly the wrong way. They're not seeing us as powerful conquerors. They're seeing us as something they can detect, understand, and fight." Professor Smith stood in her lab at the military research facility, studying brain scans from the captured alien infiltrator. 3 months had passed since the world had become aware of strange beings walking among them. Now, governments worldwide were racing to understand what they were dealing with. "Look at these patterns," she said to the team of scientists gathered around her. The holographic display showed 2 brain scans side by side, one human, one from the captured infiltrator. The controlled alien's brain activity is completely uniform, like a machine running a program. No chaos, no natural variation. The military had gotten lucky with this capture. A group of high school students had noticed the infiltrator's odd behavior at a bus stop and reported it. Special forces moved in quickly, using the new detection methods developed from studying previous encounters. The captured being looked almost human, but clearly wasn't acting under its own will. General Reed, who had been quietly observing from the corner, stepped forward. "Can you explain what we're looking at in simple terms, Professor?" Smith nodded, pulling up more detailed scans. "Whatever is controlling these beings erases their natural brain patterns and replaces them with artificial ones. But here's the interesting part. When we kept the infiltrator in a room with human volunteers for several days, its brain activity started showing signs of chaos, like our mental patterns were infecting it. The discovery had been accidental. They had placed human guards to watch the infiltrator, and the medical team noticed strange changes in its readings. The longer it spent around humans, the more its artificial thought patterns began to break down. It's like their control signal can't maintain its grip in the presence of human brain activity," Smith continued. "Our minds naturally generate what we're calling psychic static. We think it's why they couldn't control us in the first place." One of the younger scientists spoke up. "The question is, can we use this? Can we turn our immunity into a weapon?" Smith clicked to another display, showing a series of experiments they'd conducted. "We already are. Look at this." The screen showed readings from various alien technology they'd recovered. Their devices start malfunctioning after prolonged exposure to human brainwaves. "We're disrupting their control signals just by being ourselves." The general's eyes narrowed with interest. "How long until we can weaponize this effect?" "We already have prototypes," Smith replied, leading the group to another part of the lab. Here, several devices sat humming quietly. These amplify human brain patterns. Early tests show they can disrupt their control signals at a distance. We're calling it Project Freedom. The demonstration that followed impressed even the skeptics in the room. They'd brought in another captured infiltrator, its movements still robotically smooth. When they activated the prototype device, the being suddenly stopped, its artificial behavior patterns breaking down. "The real breakthrough came when we realized we didn't need to create anything new," Smith explained. "We just had to amplify what our brains already do naturally. Every human mind is already a weapon against their control. We just needed to turn up the volume." Around the world, similar discoveries were being made. In Japan, scientists found that large groups of humans thinking in sync could create powerful disruption fields. In Brazil, researchers discovered that children's brains were particularly effective at breaking down control signals, their naturally chaotic thought patterns acting like psychic scrambling devices. The general studied the readings with growing confidence. How long until we can deploy these on a larger scale? A few weeks for the portable units, Smith replied. But there's more. She pulled up a global map showing strange energy patterns. We think the aliens are using satellites to maintain their control over their infiltrators. If we can boost our disruption field enough, we might be able to interfere with their entire control network. One of the military scientists pointed to some unusual readings. We've detected similar satellites around other planets in nearby systems. If we can disrupt their network here, we could potentially free other controlled species, Smith finished. Our immunity might not just save us, it could free the galaxy. The general nodded slowly, understanding the implications. Humanity had found itself in an unexpected position. Their supposed weakness, their chaotic, emotional minds, had turned out to be their greatest weapon. And now, they had a chance to not just defend themselves, but to become liberators. Begin mass production of the disruption devices, he ordered, and get me in touch with the UN Security Council. They need to know we're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. We're fighting for every species these aliens have enslaved. As the team rushed to comply, Smith turned back to her readings. The aliens had thought humans were primitive because they couldn't control them. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a species that could break their control over others, armed with the power of chaos itself. Captain Anderson stood on the bridge of the Earth's first deep space military vessel, the Freedom, watching as his crew prepared for their first major offensive against the Dominion. The ship housed humanity's largest psychic disruption array, built using everything they had learned about their natural immunity to mind control. All disruption systems at full power, reported Technical Officer Wilson from her station. The massive device hummed through the ship, amplifying the natural chaos of human brain patterns into a weapon. We're ready to begin broadcasting. The Freedom had tracked a Dominion control ship to a small colony world. Scans showed thousands of enslaved aliens living under mind control, their thoughts locked into artificial patterns by the Dominion's technology. This would be humanity's first attempt to free another species. Launch the disruption field, Anderson ordered. The crew had trained for months for this moment. They knew the risks. No one had ever attempted to break the Dominion's control on this scale before. The effect was immediate and dramatic. As the amplified human brain patterns washed over the colony, the controlled aliens began to show signs of breaking free. The Dominion ship above the planet responded immediately, increasing power to their control signals, but they couldn't overcome the chaos humanity had unleashed. "Sir," called out Sensor Officer Brown, "I'm detecting massive changes in brainwave patterns across the colony. The control signals are breaking down. They're waking up." On the main screen, they watched as the formerly enslaved beings began moving differently, their robotic movements replaced by natural gestures. Some fell to their knees, others looked around in confusion, and many began celebrating as they realized they were free for the first time in generations. The Dominion ship tried to react, but they had never designed their vessels to fight free-thinking opponents. Their entire military strategy relied on controlling their enemies' minds against humans who were immune, and now armed with the power to break their control over others. They were vulnerable. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, Brown reported urgently. 5 more Dominion vessels approaching. Anderson smiled. This was exactly what they had hoped for. "Launch our satellites," he ordered. The Freedom released dozens of small devices, each one designed to amplify and spread human brain patterns through space. Activate Plan Chaos. Across Earth, millions of humans had volunteered to join their minds with the disruption network. Their combined thought patterns, chaotic and free, were now being broadcast through space, carried by the satellites. The effect spread like a wave, washing over the Dominion ships. Their controlled crews are breaking free, Wilson reported excitedly. The ships are losing coordination. Look, their weapons aren't even powering up. They can't maintain control. The Dominion had never faced anything like this. Their entire empire was built on the assumption that ordered, controlled minds were superior. But now they faced the unleashed power of billions of chaotic human minds, each one adding its own unique pattern to the disruption field. We're receiving transmissions from the freed ships, Communications Officer Green announced. They're thanking us. Many of them have been under control for hundreds of years. They're offering to join us in fighting the Dominion. Anderson watched as more ships arrived, not to fight, but to be freed. News had spread quickly through the Dominion's empire about a species that could break their control. Their perfect order was crumbling in the face of human chaos. "Sir," Wilson called out, "the original colony is asking to speak with us. They say they know of dozens more controlled worlds. They want to help us free them." The captain nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. Humanity had worried they were behind the other species in terms of technology and development. But their unique minds, evolved in isolation on Earth, had turned out to be exactly what the galaxy needed. "Send word back to Earth," he ordered. "Operation Freedom is a success. Tell them to prepare more ships. We're not just going to defend ourselves, we're going to free every world, every species under Dominion control." As the crew rushed to comply, Anderson looked at the growing fleet of freed ships gathering around them. The Dominion had spent thousands of years building an empire on mind control, never imagining that the very chaos they sought to eliminate would be their undoing. Humanity's gift to the galaxy would not be order, but freedom, the freedom to think, to feel, and to be wonderfully, beautifully chaotic. The Dominion's main control center, hidden deep in their home system, was in complete chaos. For the first time in their 1,000-year history, the High Council found themselves facing total defeat. Emergency alarms blared as reports flooded in from across the galaxy, world after world breaking free from their control. Commander Gray stood before the Council, his usual confidence shattered. The humans have launched what they call the Great Liberation. Their fleet, now joined by freed species from 100 worlds, is systematically destroying our control networks. Our empire is falling apart. The Council Chamber's displays showed the devastating progress of the human-led alliance. Freed ships, carrying powerful human-made disruption devices, jumped from system to system. Each arrival brought more chaos, more freedom, more rebellion against the Dominion's perfect order. On a small agricultural world, thousands of newly freed beings tore down the control towers that had kept them enslaved for generations. In a mining system, the workers turned their heavy equipment against the Dominion's facilities. Everywhere, the amplified chaos of human thought patterns broke through centuries of control. "How many systems have we lost?" demanded the head counselor, his voice shaking with rage and fear. 60% of our territory is now free," Gray reported. "And the liberation is accelerating. The humans, they're not just breaking our control. They're teaching other species how to resist us. Even worlds we haven't lost yet are beginning to show signs of rebellion." Dr. Blue, who had been brought to the Council to explain the disaster, stepped forward. "The humans have done something we never thought possible. They've weaponized their chaotic nature. Their disruption fields don't just break our control, they remind other species how to think freely. It's like a chain reaction we can't stop." The Council watched helplessly as another sector fell. The humans had adapted quickly, learning to use their ships' disruption fields like surgical tools. They would free a planet's population, while keeping the Dominion's military forces confused and disorganized. The freed beings would then join the Liberation Fleet, adding their own ships and knowledge to the cause. "We still hold the capital systems," one counselor said desperately. "We can fortify our defenses, rebuild our empire from our core worlds." But even as he spoke, new alarms sounded. The displays showed a massive fleet emerging from faster-than-light travel on the edge of the home system. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species, all united under the banner of freedom. And at their head, Earth's vessels, broadcasting their chaotic liberation signal at full power. "They found us," Gray whispered. The Dominion's greatest secret, the location of their home system, had been revealed by their own freed slaves. Every species they had controlled now turned their knowledge against their former masters. The Council watched in horror as the Liberation Fleet moved through their defenses like they weren't even there. The Dominion's weapons, designed to be used by controlled minds, proved useless when their operators began breaking free. Ship after ship, station after station, fell silent as their crews awakened to freedom. "Listen to me," Dr. Blue suddenly spoke up. "We still have a choice. I've studied the humans extensively. They don't want to destroy us. They want to free us from ourselves. Even now, they're broadcasting terms for our surrender." The Council chamber's screens filled with the human message, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Your empire of control is over. But your people don't have to fall with it. Surrender now, and you'll be given the same chance as everyone else. The chance to live freely, to think your own thoughts, to join a galaxy united by choice rather than control." As the message played, something unprecedented happened in the Council chamber. The counselors began to feel the effect of the human disruption field, but instead of fighting it, some began to embrace it. For the first time in their lives, they felt the freedom of truly independent thought. "I can feel it," one counselor said, wonder in his voice. "All these years we thought chaos was our enemy. But look at what these humans have built. Unity through freedom, strength through diversity. We were wrong. We were so wrong." The head counselor stood, looking at the displays showing the Liberation Fleet waiting patiently at the edge of their system. The humans hadn't attacked their capital world directly. Even now, they were offering a choice. "Send our response," he ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of history. "The Dominion surrenders. The age of control is over. The age of freedom begins." 5 years after the fall of the Dominion, Earth had become the heart of a new galactic community. The same chaos that had made humans immune to control now made them natural peacekeepers in a galaxy learning to live with freedom. The old Dominion capital world hosted the first Galactic Council, where representatives from hundreds of species worked together to build a better future. Professor Smith walked through the grand halls of the Galactic Science Center, now Earth's greatest gift to the freed worlds. Here, scientists from across the galaxy studied the power of free thought and worked to prevent anyone from ever building another empire of control. "The results from the latest studies are fascinating," Dr. Blue told her as they walked. The former Dominion scientist had become one of Earth's strongest allies, helping everyone understand the importance of mental freedom. "Every species we've freed has developed their own unique thought patterns again. It's like watching hundreds of gardens bloom after a long winter." They entered the main research chamber, where massive screens showed brain-wave patterns from different species. Each one was beautiful in its own way, some structured like music, others wild like storm clouds, all of them free from the artificial uniformity the Dominion had forced upon them. "The children are the most remarkable," Smith replied, pulling up data from various worlds. "Those born after liberation have naturally chaotic thought patterns, almost like humans. Evolution itself is celebrating freedom." In orbit above Earth, Captain Anderson commanded the new Galactic Peace Station. The massive structure served as both a symbol and a shield, its sensors constantly watching for any sign of mind control technology. But its most important function was as a teaching center, where members of every species learned to protect themselves against mental invasion. "Another graduation day," he said proudly, watching ships depart carrying newly trained defense instructors to their homeworlds. Each one would teach their people how to strengthen their natural mental defenses, ensuring that no one could ever control them again. Down on Earth, in the rebuilt halls of the United Nations, General Reed attended a very special ceremony. The former Dominion Commander Gray stood before the assembly, ready to present the final report on the rehabilitation of his people. We have finally dismantled the last of the old control technology, Gray announced. But more importantly, we have learned to embrace the chaos we once feared. My people are rediscovering art, music, and the joy of unexpected thoughts. We are learning that true strength comes from freedom, not control. The assembly erupted in applause. It was moments like these that showed how far the galaxy had come. The species that had once tried to control everyone now helped guard against such control. The Dominion's great libraries, once used to perfect mind control, now helped species recover their lost cultural heritage. In a quiet garden outside the assembly, two children played, one human, one from the former Dominion. Their laughter carried the same chaotic joy, their minds equally free and beautiful in their disorder. A nearby psychic sensor showed their brain patterns dancing together, creating something new and wonderful. "This is what we fought for," Smith said to Blue as they watched the children play. "Not just freedom from control, but the freedom to grow, to change, to become something new." The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The human trait that the Dominion had seen as a weakness had transformed into the foundation of a new era. Ships carried human disruption devices, not as weapons now, but as safeguards, their chaotic signals a constant reminder of the importance of free will. The former Dominion worlds had transformed the most. Their stark, ordered cities now burst with color and creativity. Their people, once bound by rigid control, now celebrated the unexpected. They had learned from humanity that the most beautiful gardens grow wild. "We thought we were advanced because we could control others," Blue said, watching the children play. "But these human children taught us the greatest wisdom of all, that true advancement comes from accepting chaos, embracing freedom, and letting every mind find its own path." As the sun set on another Earth day, ships from 100 worlds moved peacefully through the solar system. Each carried beings whose minds were their own, whose thoughts danced with the same beautiful chaos that had first made humans immune to control. The galaxy had learned that the most powerful force wasn't control, it was the simple, wonderful freedom to be yourself.